Just as Destiny is dying, Ubisoft brings a shooter that's modeled almost entirely after it. You might say that they saw the roaring success of Bungie's title and wanted to duplicate that. Well, whatever the reasons are, we have The Division. At first look at the beta, it's a competent multi-platform title with a PC port that by all measure had a lot of effort put into it. There are options available for PC players that you don't normally see in ports. In over 10 hours of play, I managed to not come across a single bug or crash. I was surprised. In the last 3 years, Ubisoft games haven't exactly been stable, by all accounts. That said, the mouse options do need a bit of more work. It might be because I have a high DPI mouse, but I couldn't manage even at 0% sensitivity to get it under control. It remained too high no matter what I did. I played almost entirely by controller because of this issue after that. It did give me an opportunity to test the game, pad support though, and what I found was that the game, unlike most lousy PC ports, immediately recognizes the Xbox One controller. So big plus there, no connecting the gamepad before launching the game, no weirdness associated with that, so that's great. Now that you know that the game is functional, I should probably explain why The Division didn't actually grab me. There are a few key reasons for this. The combat initially can be exciting. It's kind of like a mixture of Mass Effect or Gears of War cover mechanics. You bounce from wall to wall as you're trying to flank or use angles to your advantage against the horde of enemies. However, play the game long enough and you'll realize that it breaks down. The AI enemies are, for lack of a better word, dumb. They stagger around like drunks, waving their guns, walking forward, and when they finally do actually take cover, it's not in any sort of cohesion with the rest of their squad. It's almost like they're completely separate. Enemies will just gradually walk towards, and you ignoring where their friends are positioned, making it really easy to take them out. Sometimes they don't even take cover at all and just stand around waiting for you to kill them. There's also a class of enemy unit that their sole purpose is to just charge you with a bat, and not in a smart way. That class never takes cover and just runs in a beeline straight towards you. In a better, more realistic combat situation, they would mix it up where they'd be predominantly melee. I realize that they're basically making these units into a loose trinity, but the way that they make it feel makes it feel very basic. It's almost as if you know, like, telegraphed ahead of time what they're gonna do, and it's not what they're doing is all that special. When you do couple that with the way that they are designed as bullet sponges, it makes it way too bland and makes it feel entirely boring. The hard mode version of the one true mission I was actually able to play in the beta, it's one of the ones that's actually repeatable, which is what you're seeing here, did not change anything beyond making their health bar bigger and dealing a little bit more damage. The health bar was big enough, actually, that on the hard mode to actually require a full clip, if not 2 per enemy. With that, you basically get the combat beaten into your head. Unload on one guy, he dies, you're empty, reload, change target. It's basically that for hours upon hours upon hours upon hours. Your grenades are relatively useless and don't deal enough damage, really, to make it worthwhile over reloading and just shooting more. The abilities which I had access to barely did anything at all to make an impact on the battlefield. The character structure in general, because of this, makes it feel like you have no uniqueness at all on your team. There's no reason to kind of structure your character in a unique way to make it feel like you have any sort of power on the battlefield beyond just your weapon. At least with the beta is concerned, you can only assign 2 abilities per character and plus a signature ability. Signature one of which I wasn't actually able to try because it's actually locked out of the beta. I don't know if the rest of the tree will be all passives, but I don't feel like players will have a lot of options to really differentiate themselves from, at least first glance. For the beta, I chose to have the group heal and radar pulse, both of which seemed like they were the most useful of the options that I had available to me in the beta. I realized that part of this could just be because of how much I had access to during the test. Just not seeing the real hook to the combat. The guns seem to fire much faster than the actual numbers come up on the screen, creating a kind of disconnect in the damage and impact that I'm having on the battlefield or that players have on the battlefield. At all times, I felt like 1 shot or 2 per every 4 was missing, or the damage number just didn't tick. It left me feeling like I was at a loss, that I was either lagging or missing, or if it was some sort of bug. It's a kind of strange feeling that's kind of hard to describe unless you're actually experiencing it firsthand. Mission bosses felt soulless. The few that I actually got to see were pretty much stationary, moved even less than the regular enemies. They usually carried a heavy gun or something that required them to be behind a wall permanently. So the combat is if I could describe it with a single word that makes any sense. Quest structure just seems to be so straightforward as Destiny-like, if not less so. I mean, as a player, you start off at level 4 and are thrown into an intro scene on a helicopter and are quickly told to retake the post office. After that's done, you get a quick scene with the other main character, and then that's pretty much it for the story portion of the beta. From that point on, the real meat of the game are these very little quick instant areas, repeatable quests which reward you with class marks or coins and some experience. You can turn up and level up in part of the post office section of the game. It's kind of a complicated thing, but let's just say that it's not fun. They're very weird. And you typically spend anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes walking to the marker, and usually about 20 seconds to a minute completing the actual quest. That's it. Every time I did one of these quests, I spent more time walking to the marker than actual total quest completion time. The only thing that you typically have to do while you're walking is hope that some citizen comes up to you and asks something of you, so you get a little bit more XP or a cosmetic item along with it. And there's really not much else for you to do along the way unless you're looking for the stupid collectibles, which, you know, if you're that kind of person, that's cool, but that's really not something that's going to hook you for longer than a few seconds. It feels like a bore. The group I played with for most of the time in the beta summed it up best when one of them asked a couple minutes into playing it, "Where's the autorun key?" A mode of transit beyond the very few fast travel points would have helped. Something like a dirt bike would help even more, but I'm really not even sure if they haven't even plans to really do that with the way that they structure the city. It's kind of like a linear path. After completing them, you can kind of go back to the map and have it regenerate, new quests, new little objectives on the map. And you can go do them, but the only problem with that is usually you end up with repeats of these same quests that you've already done. I swear, I must have done the same contaminated multi-story apartment hunt for flashing boxes mission probably about 5 or 6 times by the end of my experience with the beta. The one real saving grace was the PvP for me. It's an interesting concept. It's basically PvPvE with a risk versus reward mechanic. Proximity voice actually is really useful in finding groups in this stuff. I had no problem actually getting one because of it. I had a really fun time with the Dark Zone. In fact, I found myself at max level in no time. It has its own vendors and gear and areas, so if you wanted to skip most of the regular game, you could do that. But since a lot of the equipment actually requires a PvE level as well, you can't totally skip that part. A ping pong back and forth is needed, and I imagine that's how the main game structure will be as well. I don't want to spend too much time on it, since I expect that most people who are interested in the Division will have already heard so much about the Dark Zone. The last thing I would just want to add about the Dark Zone stuff, though, is that if I was to, deciding to play the game, this is probably where I would spend most of my time. And I imagine this is probably going to be the main draw of a lot of people approaching the Division. Not all of what the Division does, though, is bad. Just kind of summing up my thoughts. Some of it's really good, in fact, but the mediocre shooter mechanics and this is all coming around at the same time as Overwatch, Lawbreaker, and Paragon and others. Unreal Tournament's supposed to be coming out soon in a full release as well. So I doubt it will find success in this really populated, heavily competitive new field of FPSs. If Ubisoft really wants to get people excited about the game, The Division, I thought they would have had to have done some bigger beta with more content and a longer cycle. Maybe showing off raid content or any other, future endgame stuff. It's a competent but okay title, which has a lot of competition. And that's the real problem. And with the recent reports that the PC version's being held back because of graphics issues on console, and then also the security and cheating issues that have been highlighted by people already hacking in the beta, I'm going to hold off on buying this one. I'll wait for the reviews, and then even likely after that, I won't pick it up until it comes down in price. If it interests you, don't let me change your mind. Again, it's only my opinion.